Nutcracker is a particularly busy ballet for the technical staff and stage management, particularly Act 1. There are a number of small scenes leading into the big scene, and a lot of scenery and furniture needs to be set for that act before the start of the performance. There are a lot of changes and cues in the show, and it is absolutely crucial to have all the scenery and the props set in the right place.
Gentlemen, stop, please. Stop!
When you come to the transformation, you're pulling off bits of scenery out of sight. If they're on the wrong marks or slightly too far upstage or downstage, then the likelihood is that they could crash into a wing as they're coming off or get in a dancer's way. So it is absolutely imperative that everything is set absolutely correctly.
In the big transformation scene, when the Christmas tree grows and you have this wonderful crescendo and build-up of the music, which is quite breathtaking, if you try and then put lots of people rushing around doing steps and all this, you just kill it. So I think that's one of the important parts of the transformation scene, is to let it speak for itself. It's very important in the ballet because it changes the whole proportions of the dancers, because this room suddenly grows and grows, and the Christmas tree grows and grows, and that makes the dancers smaller and smaller. And that change of scale is vitally important because it does take you into another world, a world of fantasy.
Backstage is particularly busy. Offstage, out of sight, we hope, with scenery. Obviously, once it's been struck, it has to be got out of the way. We've got all the dancers running around, quick changes going on. I am in charge of the stage during performances. My job entails following a score in which I have all the cues, the lighting cues, the fly cues, the scenery stage cues for coming on and off. I mean, crucial that you get them right. And I do get nervous, but the adrenaline that one has, particularly leading up to the transformation, you're so involved, and that somehow that takes over. Deluxe Q30, go. Clock turn, go.
I think this ballet probably has more cues in the first act than a lot of them, with lifts and bridges and flying and everything. And of course, if you're in control of something and it doesn't grow, you again look an absolute idiot. So the nerve quota in that first act is quite a lot.
Lex Q33, go. Stand by transformation part 1, stand by fly Q4, stand by Lex Q34. I like the challenge of getting it right, and the feeling at the end of Act 1, when you've got through it and everything has gone absolutely as it should, is the most wonderful, wonderful feeling. Lex Q34, fly Q4 and transformation part 1. Go. Stand by Lex Q35 to 39, stand by bridges, doll's house, fort, wheelchair, glitter. First gunshot, stand by fly Q4A, stand by opium prompt side treads and rocking horse. Lex Q35, go. Lex Q36, bridges, fly Q4A, opium prompt side platforms and rocking horse. Go. 37 and Doll's House. Go. 4, go. Glitter, go. I absolutely adore Nutcracker. I love the music. I particularly like this production. And as I say, the adrenaline that one gets from running a ballet like this is enormous. So it's incredibly satisfying when you get to the end of it.
My first involvement ever with the Nutcracker, because it wasn't, when I first joined the company, a ballet that was in the rep at Christmas. It was always Sleeping Beauty, or Cinderella, in fact. And when Rudolf Nureyev joined the company and wanted to mount a production of a classic, it was the Nutcracker that he chose. So I didn't by then I was a soloist. I didn't grow up in the lower ranks of the ballet, and he used me to work out some of the things as the prince, because he was taking the rehearsals. And in his production, rather interestingly, the lead role for the male dancer was Drosselmeyer to start with, and then in the transformation you had a very quick, sort of quite hair-raising change into the prince. So at an early age, I had a taste of dancing both roles. And I can see why Rudolf did it, because as the prince, you were just a hero, the glamour boy. Not much depth to that. You just come on in the last act and dance. So you had the challenge of becoming this older uncle figure, this rather strange man with magical powers. And then in Peter Wright's production that he did for us, I was just the prince. Now I have the natural characteristics for Drosselmeyer as the years have gone by. So Peter just slightly changed certain elements and certain accents in the role of Drosselmeyer to give him a little more powers in the sort of magical proceedings. As I've left the stage as a classical dancer and I've sort of crept my way into sort of the mime roles, some of them, not all of them, it's a sort of, it's a gift for me, because it's kept me on stage when perhaps I might not have been. It was a bit of a challenge, because although it might not look it to young eyes, for me at my age, there was still quite a bit of sort of physical stuff to get through, and just being on stage again, you lose touch. So I had to sort of cope with the nerves. And also the worst thing in it, however minor they are, there are a couple of sort of tricks in it, and of course the worst thing with tricks is if the lever doesn't work or this, and you're left with 6 omelettes on your face. But it's lovely for me just to get back on stage. It's a, you know, as I said, heaven-sent role for me.
The worst thing that can happen to these big classics is they become museum pieces. And that's what I've spent a lot of my life trying to avoid, whether it's Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, Giselle, Coppelia, Nutcracker, any of them, is to make sure, without destroying the original intentions of the creators, that they are acceptable and communicate with audiences today. So I was very, very pleased to have this opportunity to rethink and rework some of the production. And it seems to work very well. I think that Nutcracker is an enduring popular ballet, primarily because of the music. It is a wonderful, wonderful score. It's romantic, it has great moments of emotion and wonderful, big, almost symphonic sections. It's so inspiring to choreograph to. Although it's not always very straightforward, the sort of dance impetus you get out of the music, it makes you want to dance, and it's natural to dance to it. And it's such variety, you see, and such colour. The great thing about Nutcracker is the fact that there are so many different dances right through, from the first act, when you have the dolls' dances, then you have the snowflakes, who are like snow fairies, and then when you get to the palace, there are all these different dances, national dances, which give great scope to a company. And one of the famous pieces, of course, is the Valse des Fleurs, the Waltz of the Flowers. I've introduced into it a leading flower, as it were. I've called her the Rose Fairy. That again breaks it all up, so you have a big solo in the middle of it for the Rose Fairy, and then the supporting fairies and their escorts, because the music is very exciting. It's a wonderful waltz. The choreography in the Nutcracker is, in this production, is mostly mine. Clara was just a young girl, so there wasn't much opportunity for dancing. But by making her slightly older, this has helped give choreographic scope, and there's a wonderful pas de deux between Clara and Drosselmeyer's nephew. And also, it helps very much in the last act, so she can join in all the different dances. I think Drosselmeyer is quite a complex character. In the original production, he was a counsellor, rather a sad character. And I decided, in order to increase the fantasy side of the ballet, which I think is what appeals to the audience a lot, is to change his character into this magician who is godfather to Clara. When you come to, for instance, the grand pas de deux at the end between the sugar plum fairy and the prince, there's always been one or two cuts in that. I've opened up every cut I could find because I think that it's so beautiful, the music. It's made it a bit harder for the stars because they have a bit more to do. But Tchaikovsky knew best how to balance and how to build something, so trust Tchaikovsky, I'd say. in the snowflake scene, when it was originally done in St. Petersburg, according to the notation, there were, I think, 61 snowflakes. Now, we couldn't do that here because to have a quarter ballet of 60 is too much, and the stage wouldn't be big enough. And I decided to base it very much on the original Ivanov choreography, but I brought in Clara and the nephew and made it, I think, slightly more interesting, because actually in the notation all it says, it gives you the floor patterns, but nothing about the steps except waltzing, waltzing, waltzing. And I think today that would be no longer acceptable, just to have patterns and waltzing. So I've jollied that up a bit, and I think that's worked very well.